Hey folks, in today's episode of the SysAdmin Weekly podcast, we are talking about GitHub Copilot. Now, despite how you feel about doing developer-ish type things as a sysadmin, the fact is that things like DevOps and DevSecOps have really kind of blurred the lines between sysadmin and developer over the years. Now, Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI companion, has been embedded into GitHub and is surfaced both on github.com as well as popular tools like Visual Studio Code. Now, GitHub Copilot is the Swiss Army knife for sysadmins as well as developers, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about why you should be taking a look at it and how it can help you with your day-to-day. So that and lots more on today's episode of the SysAdmin Weekly podcast.
That means it's time for SysAdmin Weekly, your weekly show designed specifically for sysadmins by sysadmins, for all those tireless tech folks working in the trenches day in and day out to keep our digital world spinning. You can tell we've done the show a couple of times. I've got the intro down finally, I think. Anyway, how's it going, Eric? I got my good friend Eric Siren with me today. How's it going?
I'm good. How you doing, Andy?
Doing good. Well, I've got the intro down, but I don't have my guest introduction down yet. So someday.
I was afraid you were going to jinx yourself with being a little happy about the...
No, not quite. I'm sure I'll mess up another intro at some point in the future. But anyway, we've got a great episode lined up for you all today, and we're talking about GitHub Copilot, which is a fantastic topic in and of itself. I think people hear GitHub Copilot and they just immediately think like, oh, that's some dev thing, right? If you're a sysadmin. But there's a lot of implications and really handy, juicy goodness for sysadmins specifically out of GitHub Copilot as well. And this episode is a bit of a first, not just because it's the first time we're talking about GitHub Copilot, but Eric's going to do a little bit of a demo on this episode as well, too. And for the folks that are listening, if you're hurtling down the highway at 70 miles an hour, or if you're in the EU, what is that, 90 kilometers an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, something like that. That's the ignorant American in me, sorry. But if you're listening to the audio version of this, we're going to do this short demo in a way that you won't be missing anything, right? If you want to hop on the YouTube version of the show and visually see what Eric's doing, you can. But again, like I said, we're going to do it in such a way that you don't have to be visually watching what Eric's walking through it. So it's going to be mostly conversational, but should be good. So before we get to that, we have our usual weekly recurring segments, the first one being our News React segment. And this is the part of the show where myself and my co-host, we talk about a news item that really caught our eye that particular week. And I guess selfishly, I'll start. Me being the security guy I am, I'm a regular out on bleepingcomputer.com. And there was a Microsoft update-centric, Windows update-centric article that caught my eye. And it's strange. Usually I hear about these things before they hit the non-Microsoft blogs and press. But this is the first time I've actually heard about this, and the fact that Microsoft has introduced a new update orchestration platform built on top of Windows Update that really, it sounds like they're wanting to become the platform that updates all the things. So updating third-party apps, things of that nature. And, I instantly think of Winget. Winget is a PowerShell utility. It's very similar to apt-get or DNF or Zipper, for those Linux folks out there. It's a command line package management solution. But it sounds like those types of capabilities are being roped up into Windows Update. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Certainly from a manageability perspective, the less third-party apps I need to update by hand, the better. So I think it's a win, but again, it all comes down to implementation, right? So I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and I'll hand things over to Eric to see if he's got any thoughts on that particular idea, and then what his own news item, if any, that he has.
I'm going to reserve judgment on Microsoft taking over patching and deployment. I still left a bad taste in my mouth with all the WSUS things, and I don't know how much I want to hand them. It's. I think we're all trying to find some holy grail of package management, and I just don't think we're ever going to find it. But we'll see. You know what? I'm just going to reserve judgment.
Apt-get, apt in the Debian ecosystem. You all see the Debian swirl above my head in the show every week here, right? That's as close to perfect as it gets, I think, in my opinion. But
and I'm not going to argue with that. But again, what you just said a little bit ago is it's not the package manager so much as it is the packages, and I have gotten plenty
Very
that
true.
have tattooed and left remnants of things all over my systems, and then
that's true.
Do I want? And I hate that question of, do I wipe my system fresh and start over just to root this thing out? Or do I live with, for the most part, I'm kind of the guy that, like, a file that is literally never opened and doesn't consume enough space on my disk to worry about is not hurting me in any way.
Assuming it's not increasing your attack surface, right? Again, there's the security guy.
If it's never opened, it doesn't matter. If you infect
right.
a file and I never load it into memory, is it really infected? I don't even know what to tell you, man.
As long as it's not like a C compiler that's hanging out there or something.
It still has to be loaded into memory,
right?
If it's never loaded into memory, is it really infected? This is sort of that kind of, I really don't like this at all, but it's also not hurting me. And I really, that whole, I'll spiral out pretty fast if I'm allowed to do that. And so I do kind of, it makes my eye twitch a little. I gotta go get
us security folks, we always have to be like, but what if? Well, what if?
And that's a valid thing. I don't, and so when I hear somebody else like, oh, I got to get every last little piece off of here, I'm like, I don't, but okay. All right. Yeah, you do you, man.
Anyway.
That's fine. So, yeah, I'm going to reserve judgment on this. I don't want to push it. I think, so I've been head down on another problem that I also shouldn't talk about, or I'll spiral on that one too. But I did have scrolling through something and saw another AI CEO like that. Well, AI is going to replace all entry-level white-collar jobs in the next few years. And like, it feels to me like he's trying to sell me something. Like, oh, let's replace all your humans with these non-humans. And like, AI still can't figure out. Like, if you want to have some fun, go out and Google like AI videos of people eating pizza, and like all the weird, like they're holding the pizza on the other side of their hand and they're putting it in upside down, and like AI is not ready to replace a human, not even close. I mean, this is the basic things. But my response to that particular guy, as someone who has completed his MBA, let me tell you, the AI could replace most CEOs today. So maybe these CEOs should be a little bit quieter when they're proclaiming all of our jobs coming to an end.
That's a good point. That's the first time I've heard the CEO bit, but yeah, I could see it. I could certainly see it.
They make a big deal about how hard that job is, but mostly because they want to justify getting, $300 million a year, while the rest of us are getting, a few, tens of thousands of dollars, working 6 times. I'm about to go off on a spiral here. I need to be careful. But I got to be honest, man, CEO jobs for the most part aren't that difficult. So, yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, it's like I also want to hedge my bets and be like, yeah, there's a whole lot of things I'm not bringing in play here, and but at the same time, yeah, this guy should probably be very careful. I guarantee AI can replace him faster than it can replace me or you or probably most of the people listening to this. So
this is such an interesting topic area, and maybe we have to do a whole episode around this. But I don't think this is the same guy. I saw a headline, this is a couple weeks back now, where one of the guys from Anthropic, I think it was, basically said that if all development on Gen AI stopped right now, it already has the capabilities to replace white collar workers today. Now, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, well, you work for Anthropic, one, right?
Yeah.
Two, I think about some jobs, yeah, myself, for example, and I'm a security evangelist for a security software vendor, right? And so I have one foot in sales, one foot in marketing, one foot in technical. That's 3 feet. I don't have 3 feet, but you know what I mean. But there are nuances and context between those three different hats that I I don't think an AI is going to be able to if then its way through it. You
Right.
know what I mean? It might do a fairly good job, but it's going to probably miss some things, right? And don't get me started on hallucinations. I mean, I know they're more rare, but they do happen. And it's funny, we're going to be talking about that as we talk about GitHub Copilot later today. But
Yeah.
um,
I think we
I
should have a conversation at some point and really dig into the AI thing.
yeah,
There's a lot. So when you read stuff like this, there's a whole lot of assumptions being made and a whole lot of.
yeah,
I would like to ask that Anthropic guy, how many of those jobs that you think AI is going to eliminate out of all of them, how many have you personally done? And how many of them have you, if you haven't done them, you've been involved with people who were doing them poorly?
all right,
And how do you vet the difference and how do you explain? Because a lot of times it comes down to, well, if you weren't lazy or if you were a little bit paid a little bit better attention or something, and there's always some sort of personal failing on the person, not realizing that a lot of times it's really not how it works.
right.
Even a lot of these jobs that look easy on the outside, well, okay, uh-huh, uh-huh,
And I think not only just that, but I think the AI thing is going to create jobs that we don't even know about yet, right? That's a whole other part of the discussion too, right? So anyway, yeah, like we could go down a whole rabbit hole on that, but we'll save that for a different day. So with that, we'll move on to the next segment of the show, and that is Nerd Hour, I guess is what I'm calling this. And of course, it doesn't take a whole hour. And there's a whole story as to why I'm calling it Nerd Hour. If you want to hear what the story is, go back to episode 006, I believe it is. Anyway, so Nerd Hour, it's basically the segment of the show where we talk about the nerdy, geeky things that we've been working on, either in our personal lives or our work lives. I guess I'll selfishly start again, Eric. I can't say I've been working on anything overly nerdy this last week, but I have been doing a lot of Substack and newsletter stuff specifically for the show. So our companion newsletter is now officially live and can be reached out at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And so, I include some links that are associated with the show. I include some content that's created by Eric and myself. And I go out and I curate a bunch of really useful and helpful blog articles that are from the community and usually from folks Eric and I know, right, in the MVP community, Microsoft MVP community, or the security community. I know security folks too. A lot of security folks, but basically it's a curated list of useful stuff and some fun stuff in there too. So highly suggest you check that out. Again, newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And I have updated the sysadminweekly.com website as well with the newsletter, and I have made some changes. And so I guess I have been doing some geeky Hugo static website stuff as well too. So anyway, how about you, Eric? What have you been working on?
I've been head down on a problem with System Center Virtual Machine Manager for days, and I haven't really gotten much time to myself because of it. So, not quite prepared to talk on it yet. Other than nobody seems to know what's wrong, including Microsoft. So that's great. So,
I know the problem. I know the solution to your problem, I guess I should say. The problem, Eric, is that you're using System Center.
I know. I have had that same thought, and I would like to take it out, but in this case, it's actually middleware for another vendor to use, and so I break their product too if I take it out, and yeah,
I,
it's completely not great.
I don't think it's a secret that we're not fans of System Center on this show. That said, I will concede that Virtual Machine Manager is the lesser of all System Center evils. So, in my opinion.
Oh, that actually is probably correct. I hadn't, and which is actually really sad. Yeah, there's certain things I will say in less professional environments about it that I'm not going to say here. I'll just put it that way.
Wait, do we need to do a System Center tier list? That's a future episode right there. We're gonna do a System Center tier list. There we go. All right. I don't know if Microsoft would care for that.
I doubt
Anyway, we're gonna just move on right along here
it.
now to the main section of our show, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna be talking about GitHub Copilot today, and. I have to imagine, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know what Copilot is. Copilot is, Microsoft's uh, generative AI solution, right? And typically it's got GPT as the main model underneath, but they have Copilot Studio, which allows you to pull in all kinds of different LLMs. And so it is by no means specific to GPT under the hood. And that said, to confuse things even more, there are many copilots, right? You have Copilot that is baked into your Windows operating system. You have the freely available Copilot at copilot.com. You have Copilot Pro. You have Copilot for Microsoft 365. You have Security Copilot. And of course, what we are talking about today, GitHub Copilot. And I think, Eric, when people hear GitHub Copilot, they just assume it's some dev thing. And all the sysadmins I know, and the assumption is whatever's being talked about is developer based, their eyes tend to roll up into the back of their head and they start twitching and right. But before you go that route, folks, there is some very, very super useful things for us sysadmins and GitHub Copilot. And with that in mind, I've kind of talked about what it is and that, yes, it's made for developers. The other key point I wanted to really kind of hit home here, and we're going to have our good friend Luca Oriana on the line here to talk to us about infrastructure as code in a future episode here in the near future. He can speak to this as well too, but that line between development and system operations has been blurring for many years now, right? Especially with the advent of infrastructure as code, right? Deploying infrastructure using code like Terraform and things like that. But GitHub Copilot can really assist in that area as well. And I think for us to be well-rounded system admins, this is something we have to have our eye on. Not just GitHub Copilot, but basic coding in general for things like orchestration and infrastructure deployments. And I could think of a number of different things, but I'm going to let you get a word in edgewise here, Eric. I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
So when GitHub Copilot first came out, I wrote an article on Project Run Space about it. I really don't like that article very much, and it's been on my to-do list to go back and modernize it. It does work with some earlier versions of software that you can't, it doesn't line up very well. What I really want to drive home for everybody listening is set aside the developer thing. You're writing scripts. You have to automate things, even if you just have a couple of things. If you do not want to become a professional developer, but you want to write effective scripts, Copilot is going to be how you do that.
Yeah.
Because and I wrote in the article somewhere that somebody had estimated, this is going to accelerate development times by some certain percentage. But if you are not a developer, coder, scripter by nature, and this is not what you do, and you're doing it because you have a problem and you have to fix it in PowerShell or something, Bash is how you're going to get that done, then you're going to look more like 90 to 95% acceleration because it can do most of the work for you. And then you can Google the parts that don't work correctly, or you can Copilot chat the parts that don't work correctly, and then just tweak it until it does what you want it to do, rather than, I have no idea how to even start this. Copilot knows how to start it for you.
Right.
You kind of just have to say, this is what I want, and let Copilot do it. So I cannot stress enough that this is going to be I think in the at least for the next couple of years, Copilot and similar things, it has competition, but Copilot will be the one thing that is going to accelerate sysadmin work more than anything else.
Yeah,
Any one item, I think this will be number one on the list.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I'm thinking ahead a little bit here, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but GitHub Copilot is completely free as far as I'm aware,
It has a free tier, and it
right?
still also has its paid tier. You're basically limited to the number of interactions, I think, within the free tier. So for your typical sysadmin, I don't think you're going to get anywhere close to it. Because again, like you said, it is kind of targeted for developers who are going to be sitting there with their code and Copilot both open all day long.
Right.
Whereas for most of us sysadmins, that's not how we do. It's like, I got to get something scripted out real fast. Just pop
Yep.
open the script and get Copilot, hey, trim the fat on this for me. And then you do your actual job, the other 6.5 hours of the day. So the idea is instead of sitting in front of a script for 6.5 hours and then trying to get everything rushed in the last hour and a half, you spend an hour and a half with Copilot and then do your job for 6.5 hours, right? So, sorry, I spiraled out away from your question, but to answer your question, I think most sysadmins will be fine with a free tier.
Yeah, I would think so. And I don't think you spiraled out of the question. I think it was all pertinent information. The other thing I want to mention, the 3 places where I've used GitHub Copilot, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think these are the 3 main places is Visual Studio Code, VS Code, Visual Studio proper, like the full-blown Visual Studio. And you can also interact with GitHub Copilot directly through github.com. And so, for example, one of my favorite things was, and I just recently discovered this, like just before we hit record on this, but it's so cool is I can go into one of my repos in GitHub, open up GitHub Copilot, and just basically say, hey, tell me what this repo is. What is this code? What is this doing? And it's like, oh yeah, this is a Hugo site and it's for the website sysadminweekly.com. I mean, it was able to look at the code base and tell me exactly what the repo is for, right? So, and again, that's just one thing and a very high level example. I know, Eric, you've got a demo you wanted to show. And again, just to reiterate for those folks that may be listening instead of watching us, we're going to do this in such a way that, we're very descriptive and you're not going to really miss anything, right? So we're going to make sure that we talk through all the points. And I liken this to listening to the baseball game on the radio, right? You you hear what's going on and you can kind of visualize what's going on, but still, Eric's got a lot of great information to share here for you. So you've got Visual Studio Code open here.
Yes. And so for those of you who haven't used it, like think of your text editors, Notepad, Notepad++, whichever IDEs you like. So that's what Visual Studio Code is. You can install it. Oh, hey, I think you talked about WinGit earlier. So WinGit space install space VS Code, enter. Cool, you have it. Then you do have to sign up for a GitHub account. If you don't already have one, there is a star or a gear icon in the bottom left and I think that's an icon of a user inside a circle. So you connect your accounts there, figure it out. You'll figure it out pretty fast. You just fly them out and like, oh, hey, sign up for all these things. Make sure it's all connected. And I think there's also in the extensions, there is a Copilot extension. It may come native now with new installs. I don't know. So I'm
not entirely sure. And for those folks that may not be familiar with VS Code, installing extensions is super easy. I mean, you could almost liken them to browser extensions. Right inside of Visual Studio Code, you've got an extensions button on the left-hand side, and you can view the quote-unquote marketplace for extensions, right? And just search for Copilot, and you'll find it.
Yes, and I don't know in every instance if they change everything so much and then they leave certain things alone. So in my screen, the extensions bar is on the left. I don't know on everybody else's. For those of you who are watching, I do apologize. This theme is out of date, and so some of the contrast on the words is not very good. So also helps for us to describe what's going on, because even if you're looking at it, you may not be able to read it. So, yeah. So uh, you'll know you have Copilot if on your, I don't know what this bar is called here, but it's got the output pane on it. It's toward the bottom. Then you go all the way to the right of that, and down at the bottom, there's this little frog looking thing.
Yep.
That is your Copilot guy. And then at the top, next to the search text, there's another frog looking guy. I think it's that little Copilot. It's supposed to be like a person with goggles on his head or something.
Yeah, but like you said, it looks like a
It looks
frog.
way more like a frog to me, and that's all I can think of.
And the
So,
one thing I will also point out here is that they've done a really good job, Microsoft and GitHub, they've done a really good job in unifying the experience depending on which tool you're using. So that top drop-down menu is in exactly the same spot on github.com as it is within Visual Studio Code. So very uniform experience, which if you have a terrible memory like me, that's fantastic.
well, I'm gonna do you one better. So here we are in VS Code. You start a new file. Doesn't matter how you do it. The very first thing you get, and again, I have to apologize for the bad format or colors on the text here. Some of this really hard to read, but what you can read is as soon as you open it up right here, open chat. There's an open chat click right there on your brand. And if you were to start typing anything, it all goes away. So this is just what it does on a brand new open file with nothing in it. See how that works? When I type something, it goes away. If I empty it out, it all comes back.
So it's like a text editor, like any text editor at this point.
Yep.
So I'm going to click on the open chat. And so we're kind of brainstorming before, and this is, I did test this because I didn't want this demo to go completely terribly. I wanted it kind of be free flowing, but what I'm going to do is a real thing. So when I click open chat, it's sitting here, it said ask Copilot. So I'm going to say, create a bash script. So bash is for Linux. Create a bash script that parses phone numbers from a text file. Okay. And then I just hit enter because it's chat.
Or I feel it necessary to point out you can use a bash script on Mac OS as well. Just saying.
Well, yeah, bash is what, FreeBSD under the hood, or yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's BSD, and BSD is what, that one little half step away from Linux, So
Yep.
yeah, bash works on Unix and Linux both. So works on
So
Mac.
you've asked Copilot to
Yep.
give you basically a script that can parse out phone numbers.
Yes. And so what it does is it literally writes a script that does exactly that. Now, of course, if you're listening, you can't see it, but it is here, and you're welcome at any point to sit down in front of your Copilot session, do the same thing. Ask it to write a script for the project you're facing, the problem that you need to fix, and watch it do it. In this case, it's a bash script. Now, I am not that great at bash, and I'm honestly kind of terrified of people that are great at bash because it's a very thorough script language, but it does have the grep in here to, here's the file. It's written like a sudo help. Like if you forget to tell it the file that you want it to parse, because I specifically told it I want it to parse a text file. So it has an input for that. It has written the usage, it's written the help, and then it has written the grep command that will actually do the work. And it's all here. It may or may not work. I don't really know. This is one of the joys of the Copilot thing, is it always gets at least close. Sometimes it hits it perfectly. The simpler your request, the more likely it is to do it correctly. But I'm going to tell you now, and you will get burned if you do not double check Copilot's work. You will get burned.
Sidebar. I have to do a sidebar here really quick. I don't remember where I saw it or where I read it. I think it was on, it might have been Facebook, or it was a social media site where basically somebody wanted help sorting their music collection. They had a bunch of files, it was all messed up, subfolders everywhere. They just wanted to sort their music collection, which was in a directory. And so they asked AI, I don't remember which AI, but I remember the user complaining and asking if there's any way to recover, because what did the AI create for them? RM-RF type of stuff, because it was intending to clean up, empty subfolders, but I suspect the user executed the script at the wrong tier of the folder structure, and so then it nuked everything, right? So that's a perfect example of how, like, don't just blanket, trust every piece of code that GitHub Copilot gives you. At least take the time to make sure you understand what it's going to do, and
Yes.
maybe test it in non-production first.
Yes. And I want to come back and show you what I lean on Copilot heavily for and what I give it a little side eye about after I want to kind of get through this part. So, um, one of the things I really, really love is I love regular expressions. I always hear there's a phrase going around that, like, if you have a problem and you try to solve it with regular expressions, well, now you have two problems. I disagree. There are certain things, regular expressions have saved me months of my life. I swear, I love regular expressions. I will say at the same time, they are not at all human readable.
I was gonna say, like, this expression,
Yeah, this is 20 some odd characters here to
no
parse a
clue.
phone number. So, and I have the same, even though I think I'm relatively decent at regular expressions, I would have to sit here for a while and go, okay, what is it? Da, 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 da. So what I did is I highlighted that whole regular expression. I'm going to go back up to my chat bar here and say, explain, whoops. If I learn how to type, I am explain this regular expression. And here we go. In that, now, for you watching, it did fly it up here in this white on white text. So what I want to do is go back up to this guy, this little frog up in the title bar, which toggles the chat. It opens the sidebar. This has much, much better. And I'm going to add, basically,
Yeah.
I'm going to say the same thing.
So
Explain.
while you're doing that, I'm just gonna explain this really quick. So there's basically two modes here for GitHub Copilot. You can chat with it in line in your code, or you can open up the sidebar, the flyout menu, where it's like a proper chat menu,
Yeah.
right?
And I actually prefer the sidebar a little bit.
Same.
The one in line is a little bit more convenient, but it also, like, you'll notice, like, it's shifting my things around on screen here. So like the opener Ben Bash is at the top, followed by the inline chat, then followed by the rest of the script. So this is not actually part of the script. Line one is way up the top and line two is way down at the middle, right? So I'm kind of not a huge fan of inline. And I don't know I'm sure there's a close button. It's probably invisible, but
Yeah, and so for those folks that are listening, basically what's happened, the inline has kind of made the visibility of Eric's script here a bit
not great.
not great. Yeah, and so that's
Well,
that's
we're
where
gonna
the sidebar chat comes in and makes it much more useful.
makes it much more easy. And there's another thing that I'd like to point out is I was 'cause working on a blog, just like you said, that turns out about 700 pixels wide is about all you can really read easily. So with you having sidebars on our widescreen monitors, now we're kind of getting our screen broken up better. So I've got 700-ish pixels for code, 400-ish pixels for chat. It's easier to, anyway, that's the kind of thing that's important to an old guy like me. So now, if you look here, so of course it is broken down the description. It goes on and 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 on, explains every last little piece of this regular expression. And then it even goes on to give me, look at these examples that work. So it's already kind of even tested it for me.
Yeah, and so to kind of circle back here, so we used GitHub Copilot here to create a script to parse some phone numbers, a bash script to parse some phone numbers. And it created the code. And it also gave us this really, in my opinion, nasty looking expression that, it would take me forever to figure out what this expression is doing. We highlighted it, opened up GitHub Copilot chat, and said, hey, Copilot, what is this expression doing? Explain this to me. And it did right here with examples, which examples are great for me. I love seeing examples in code.
Yes. So now that we've got, and it's almost like, oh, hey, below this, can I have a regular expression that converts, let's say, oh, how about country abbreviations to their full country names? I just made that up while I was sitting here.
So you're asking it to take the script further
Yeah, and here now it suggested it. Now, unlike the inline, it didn't write it right there. It put it in the side because that's where I was. I was in the chat. And it even tells me we don't think that's a great use of regular expressions, which is correct because the regular and regular expressions actually has meaning that we could spend a lot of time on, but there is a good reason. This is not really a great use for it. So it kind of says, yeah, maybe you shouldn't, but if it's really what you want to do, here's one way that we could do it. And it shows it to me. And then if I want, I can copy paste, throw it in there. 100 different ways I can do this. But what I kind of want to get at is you can start a script and you can continue using GitHub Copilot to refine it, add to it, modify it, explain it. All the things that you would have been spending a bunch of time on Google and Stack Overflow manually, it's
Yeah.
going to go out and it's going to scrape Google and Stack Overflow for you. Let's not get crazy. This is what AI is doing. It's out there doing the things you would have done yourself more quickly.
Yeah. Or another case that you could use it for. Hey, I found the script online that allegedly solves all my problems. You want to paste that into VS Code.
Yes.
Hey, Copilot, tell me what this is
Tell me
doing.
what this does. And what I wanted to kind of hit you with as the security guy in the house, Andy, is like, can I throw something in there and go, hey, is this going to break my computer or introduce a security thing that I wasn't aware of? It'd be nice that if I didn't have to sit down and like, stare at a public script for hours going, man, what's
Yeah.
this thing going to do that's going to make my security team come in with pitchforks and hurt me?
I foresee my next YouTube video in the making here.
All right.
I'm gonna have to try. I'm gonna have to try something. I'm gonna have to make a script that does something nefarious and see if GitHub Copilot can catch it.
There you go.
Mm,
I'm curious.
me too.
So
I'm gonna have to try that.
So let me do one last little thing here. I'm going to open up a new file. I'm going to open chat and I'm going to say, write a PowerShell script that, let's see, accepts a host name and optionally virtual machine name, then uses the CIM commandlets to turn off any running about any matching virtual machine that is running.
So let me read
So,
this back really quick
yep.
here. So you are asking GitHub Copilot, again, for the folks listening, you're asking GitHub Copilot for another script here. I want you to write a PowerShell script that accepts a host name and optionally optionally virtual machine name, then uses the sim commandlet to turn off any matching virtual machine that is running.
And this is we did not plan this, so this is the scary live demo that may or may not work. Who knows? All right, there it goes. All right, it's got it. And I don't want to spend a lot of everybody's time just visually looking at that. That looks okay. Yeah. That should do it. I would refine it, play with it. But what I want to show, how do I really want to close this inline chat?
The close button next to accept.
Oh, sure enough.
There we go.
Oh,
no. Oh,
that's
there
all
it goes.
right. Control Z, accept. Click accept. Oh, and it goes away when you click accept. All right, now, my PowerShell people of the world. I think I turned on insert. I want to turn
See,
it off.
Eric listened to me when I said click close, and it just nuked everything. You have to hit accept. So it's UI goodness, right?
Yeah, it did what I told it to do and not what I wanted it to do. So, as computers are wont to do. So, Control Z, my best friend, fixed it. So, we're fine. All right, now, PowerShell has this cool thing called, what is it called? Comment-based help. All right, so at the beginning of any function or script, you start with the left bracket, hash sign, and you have the beginnings of a PowerShell help. Now watch this. I just put in the brackets. That's all I've done. I haven't done anything else. So I hit enter, put the space in. It says dot synopsis. It suggested that for me. Copilot did that. And look, this script stops all running VMs on a specified Hyper-V host. Copilot said that. Description. This PowerShell script, I mean, it goes and it's writing the parameters. It's writing the help for me.
It builds the
It
documentation.
builds the documentation for me. I'm just
So
letting it do it. I am not doing anything but tab and enter here, folks, and it's writing the entire thing. So when I run across modern PowerShell scripts that don't have PowerShell help, I can actually get upset at people because it was almost zero effort for me to do that.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna say,
and you're looking over my shoulder here, Andy. You're my air quote, I guess, other pair program. I guess I have two pairs because I have Copilot and Andy. So you look at this and you tell me what you think of the quality of this help message here
it's
on the spot, obviously, but
formatted very nicely.
it's got
It's
examples. All the
Yep.
parameters are explained. It's got the synopsis, the description, and I would bet. How about I do dot outputs?
If nothing
Oh, look at
else,
that! See, all I had to do is it's figuring things out as I go. I'm not doing
yep.
anything. I'm not doing any work, and this is super important.
If nothing else, it is you're 90% of the way.
Yes.
90% of the way there.
Yes.
And I think everybody listening would agree with me that us sysadmins and developers as well, I
Yeah.
guess IT people in general, we hate doing documentation. So the fact that this makes the documentation easy, I think is a game changer.
A huge game changer. So here I've got a whole functioning script here. As far as I can tell, this would do exactly what I asked it to do. I haven't vetted it yet, folks. I don't want to oversell it. This kind of feels like maybe this is a bit much. Maybe that could be refined, but whatever, and I get really picky and I start kind of, I'll criticize even like the great Jeff Hicks, I do that. I get really over picky on things and I may be reading too much into it, but it looks like this will work. I don't like right host. It's got a right host thing in here. No, I'm taking that out. No, we're not
I was
going to
gonna
do any
say,
right
like,
host stuff. I don't
it's
like that.
typically not best practice to use right
No, I
host.
don't think so, but functionally, it looks like it would do what I asked it to do, and probably not in a terrible way. And doesn't look like any side effects that I can see.
And I want to back up here for a second, right? So it's generated code. We're looking through it, right? So we're doing our due diligence as sysadmins. We're taking a look at this code that Copilot generated for us, and we're seeing if it's good enough for what we want or if it's going to cause problems. So we just called out right host, right? If you're not familiar with PowerShell, right host, it's actually going to write the output to the console. Right host assumes that there is a human sitting at the keyboard. And the problem with that is typically you're creating PowerShell scripts to automate something. You don't want to use right host in that situation.
No.
Anyway,
There was
continue.
there was an article written like there's a very old article that was written, and I wish I could remember the fellow's name, that basically goto considered harmful. And so languages that use the goto command, if you lack discipline, you can make some really bad code with goto. And so there's basically an article on that like don't do that. So tongue in cheek, kind of. I think it was actually Jeffrey Snover who wrote that right host considered harmful, wasn't it? Does that sound right to you?
Seems like something he might say, but I don't know for sure.
There is an article out there on right host that really goes into the details of what makes it so questionable. Now, I want to point out that there has been this real extreme reaction to like PowerShell itself doesn't contain a goto, which I think is nonsensical. Goto is a wonderful, or doesn't. I don't think it does. Let me no.
I'm not sure.
I don't think it does. Anyway, there are languages now that no longer have goto, which I think is actually sad because if goto used properly is a wonderful tool. Goto used poorly is insanely destructive, but it's up to the developer or the script or whatever to use it correctly. It shouldn't be up to the language. And I'm stepping off my soapbox. Right host is the same way. There are appropriate uses for it, but just wantonly throwing it into a script the way that Copilot did here, not great.
Yep. And I think you're about wrapped up with what you wanted to show us, Eric. But one of the key things that I really wanted to hit home here was hallucinations and how do I want to say it? The fact that context is super important when it comes to AI responses. You as the admin, you really understand your environment, right? You know about the NT server that still has a domain controller in the back warehouse, right? I hope you don't have an NT server running as a domain controller, but you get what I'm saying, right? You understand your environment as weird and strange as it is. If you don't effectively communicate all that to Copilot, it's going to make some assumptions
Mhm.
and pair that with hallucinations, right? So the example I gave earlier about, you know, who knows if it was hallucination or if it was user error that wiped out that poor guy's music collection, right? But those are some of the places where it can trip you up. Now, I think the other area that we haven't really touched on a whole lot here yet, Eric, is security. And the vendor that comes to mind when I think about this is Samsung. So if you think back to the very early days of ChatGPT, when it really hit the market a couple of years ago, there were developers over at Samsung that were just dropping proprietary code into GPT without a thought in the world. As soon as me as the developer drop proprietary company-owned code into a third-party tool and hit enter, that code has left the building. It is no longer under my 100% full control from a security perspective.
Mhm.
So, as an organization, you and your CISO most likely need to make the decision, are we okay using GitHub Copilot for all scripting needs?
And have you checked on the Copilot? Like maybe if you get the professional, you can tell, because I know like the Bing Copilot, you can get the organizational one and it will not use information that you enter will not go into the back end of the learning model. Do we know that GitHub Copilot does not have that?
I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect there's an option there because Microsoft is very sensitive to that. Now,
They have their own thing.
that all said, I'm sure they're doing what they say they're doing. But from a security perspective, they can say whatever they want.
Yes, do you trust the organization to do what it says it's doing? But knowing full well that you probably do not have the legal team required to take on Microsoft, even if they're in their own.
Right. Again, not saying that they're doing anything nefarious. I would say this about any company. You know,
100%,
they can say
100%.
whatever they want. And I'm not even saying that they would do something maliciously. Negligence is a thing too. Like, something happened they didn't intend to happen. And oops, your data was being used to train and now it's being used in code generation. Again, not saying that's happening, but as a security person, I'm always thinking of like the what ifs. How could this be abused, or how could a mistake be made, right? Those are things that you need to look at. Your organization needs to understand what your risk model is and what your risk tolerance is, and you make that a policy decision as an organization, right? I'll get off my security soapbox now.
That's very well said, though. Very
No,
well said. People need to consider that. 100%, 100%.
yep, yep. So now, we've kind of seen what it can do. We've seen the magic it can do for sysadmins. Talked about some places where it can trip up. We've even talked about, making policy around whether your organization should officially use Copilot or not. Now, just a couple other last minute items I have on my outline here. Shadow IT. I guess this is kind of in the same vein as security. It's security adjacent, right? But shadow IT and AI use is not just GitHub Copilot, but all AI. Shadow IT is something that you need to be concerned about and take steps to mitigate and manage. And then this is another area that this is a whole other ball of wax. You and I could do a whole episode on this particular bullet point, Eric, but that is who owns the code suggestions. And this is the thing is, I don't believe that has been 100% fully decided in a court of law yet. I know it's still the contents of AI generated stuff, code, images, text, whatever. I believe there's still a lot of active litigation happening, and I don't anticipate anything that's going to change that fact, or anything that's going to say that, oh, hey, every AI generated image in the world is now illegal. I don't think there's anything ever going to happen that does that, but that's still a question that as an organization you need to ask yourself, right? I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Eric. I'm
Well, these are important questions. I hope most folks are going to use it kind of the way that I do, and that I'm not publishing most of these scripts. A lot
Right.
of these are internal stuff. I have very particular uses, going back to that context thing. I'm working with software that maybe 6 other organizations on the planet work with, stuff like that. So for the most part, even if that code leaked, what are you going to do with it? Good
Right.
for you. Good for you. Take it. Fine. And then B, I'm not going to publish it, so ownership is not entirely relevant.
And that's all well and good. And I suspect most people are going to use it that way. I just think people, they need to make that conscious decision,
Yes, they
right?
must be aware of it and pass it around. Make sure the powers that be get some kind of input on it. I mean, going back to Shadow IT, don't hide it, because if it shows up somehow, some way out there, then and there's nobody to point the finger at except you, and they find out you could have told them and you didn't, and then the law people come knocking on your door about they want their damages. Don't do that to yourself. And trust me, I get being in a place, I got to solve this problem right now. I don't have time for this. I get that, but don't get yourself in a place you can't get out of.
Right. Uh, so again, stepping away from my security soapbox here, I want to kind of wrap up this episode with just some places where we can use it. We've already seen a number of great examples, right, where it can help sysadmins out in their day to day. We're 50 minutes in, and I'm losing my ability to speak, so that means we need to wrap it up soon. But so a couple other items I put on my list here in terms of how it can be used and should be used, right? Best when paired with domain knowledge, right? That comes back to that whole contextual thing. The more context you can give Copilot about your problem and your environment that the script is going to run in, the better code it can give you. A couple other things, really helpful for training purposes, policy guidance, and reviewing workflows as well. I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention in terms of use cases, Eric, but I think we've covered the vast majority of them, at least from a high level. I'm sure we'll think of
I
more after we hit stop on this recording.
every time, I do want to make it clear. This is a chat. It is not a Google. You're not typing it in and then, okay, well, that wasn't exactly what I wanted. Let me type the same thing a little bit different. When it gets it wrong, say, this is the part that you got wrong. This is what I need fixed.
Yep.
Behave interactively, and by all means, highlight something and say, this is throwing error message 3902. What's going on here? Ask it, let it figure your problems out. Use the highlight, use the interactivity, use the chat, talk to it. And it's, just, I cannot stress enough how you need to use this as a chat, and it will improve your life.
And I think that's a really important part. Yeah. Because if you approach it like you're typing in a Google search box, you're not going to have a great time. But
No,
like you
you're gonna
said,
get
if you
really
just,
frustrated and be like, I don't understand why anybody likes this so much. And it's what kind of made a lot of these tools kind of stutter in the beginning, is because, and I'm one of the people who did it. I'm just as guilty as anybody else. It's like, no, it's not what I wanted. So I'm just refining the question over and over and over instead of treating it like a chat. Like,
yep.
cool, thanks. You got 80% of the way there. What I really need clarity on is this or that and the other. And the nice thing about doing that too is sometimes it'll say, well, I'll ask it, where did you get the source for that? And this is my source.
Yep.
And I'll say, I've read that source. I know it's wrong. Can you find a different source? And it'll do one of two things. It'll go find something else or come back and go, sure, I found another source. And then it'll cite the same one. And you'll go, okay, you're clearly in a loop here, Copilot. I'm going to have to do this myself.
Speaking of loops, when you talk about telling it what it's done wrong or specifically what you'd like change, one thing I've come across with it was, I remember what I was doing. I had a PowerShell script that I had it help me create, where it was a looping process, right? And I could tell after it generated, I'm like, you never escape that loop. And I called it out. I'm like, okay, line, 24, you never escape that loop.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with that? It's like, oh yeah, I made a mistake. Here, maybe if we reread it like that. So I mean, again, it makes mistakes, and you as the human need to review it, right? And do your due diligence. But you can kind of provide guidance on fixing itself too. So
And even with the fixes, it's gonna do so much correct that you will be able to spend more time focusing on those little problems with
oh, for
its
sure,
help.
for sure.
So, I mean, I'm not exaggerating at all. It can accelerate your scripting, especially the newer you are, the more it's gonna accelerate, and the more experienced you are, the more it's gonna handle the light work for you.
For sure. For sure. Well, Eric, appreciate you spending some time with us today and talking to us about GitHub Copilot. I get the feeling we'll be talking about this more in the future. And I think we gave ourselves a couple of episode ideas as we step through today. So always good talking to you, my friend. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
And folks watch and hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you liked it, let us know in the comments. If you'd like to see something different, you can let us know in the comments as well too. Or maybe there's a topic you'd really like us to cover. You can reach us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. So you can send us an email. You can also sign up for our newsletter. Again, I mentioned it earlier, newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And you can also watch the show on YouTube if you'd like to see our smiling faces and Eric's, poorly themed UI. Sorry, dude.
Ouch!
Sorry.
I wrote that theme, Andy.
No, I really hope you didn't. I'm gonna feel
I
bad.
really did, but I will concede that they are developing the VS Code interface faster than my time allows me to keep up with the color changes. So,
For the
yeah.
record, I didn't think it was bad. I was just, going for comedic effect. So,
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll
I-
make sure to have a more suitable one for you next time, sir.
all right, good. I'm gonna hold you to that. Anyway, so again, folks, you can watch on YouTube. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. And with that, we'll let you get back to your week. Thanks for spending some time with us. We'll see you again next week for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.